Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Vegan World 2026 Moonshot podcast. This is the first podcast after Glasgow, COP26. And fittingly enough, we are going to be talking to um, Dash Meisler from Africa, Uganda. And he's going to be telling us about the Podrska Foundation in Africa and how they are working with people in Africa to advance the vegan movement and of course social justice and climate justice and everything that's all rolled into one in this situation that we are in. So welcome Dash. Nice to see you.
Uh, Thank you so much. The pleasure is mine. Thank you for having me here.
So let's begin by telling our viewers how did you get into this situation? How did you get involved with this Podska Foundation?
Okay. To begin with, from my background, I was raised by poultry farmers.
Mm-hmm.
So, this means that I witnessed the horrible methods used to torture these animals, such as chicken,
Mm-hmm.
scenarios where they get a knife, they dip it into fire, and when it's red hot, they cut off the beaks of these animals. Situations where they give birds medication to the fact that they can't support the weight of their own bodies. A scenario I can recall is I remember when there was this little bird who was given, he was too heavy that his legs were really small to support the weight of his own body.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever the farmer came into the poultry house to feed, so that these other birds would run over him, because they couldn't wake up, so he couldn't stand, and they had to bring the food in front of him. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
So this alone was too much on my mind. As situations whereby there was also a scenario where a hen could lay, because we wanted very huge eggs, so we could feed their hens and then they could lay huge eggs that the intestines could come out as well. And in the end, these animals had to die. So there were very many instances that happened, and I didn't even know about veganism. I didn't know about vegetarianism, but then I was like, okay, what I'm doing here is not right. I felt like it wasn't good for me to start to play God on whether I could choose which bird could go into slaughter, which bird couldn't go into slaughter. So all that piled up in my head, and I was like, okay, this should stop. So when this happens, I first went vegetarian because I didn't know the difference between vegan and vegetarian. So when I was vegetarian, I thought I was vegan until my siblings told me no, vegans don't consume milk and eggs. So because I already knew what was in the industry, what was happening, I made a very quick switch and I went vegan there and then. So I go vegan and I'm like, okay, I want to start looking out for the rights. I want to start fighting for the animals and so on and so forth. And I started looking around my area, basically in Uganda. I couldn't find any animal movement organization that
Mm-hmm.
was doing what I wanted. Well, there wasn't any animal related organization that I found. Um, the closest that I found was in South Africa, and it was for the voiceless, where they were doing cubes. And I decided to apply, and I had my first cube here in Kampala. So upon having the first cube, I realized that the cubes only had a different sector of people they were targeting, especially those people who move on the streets. And I felt like I wanted to do more. I wanted a bigger audience. So this is when I'm like, I should. This is when it comes into my mind. I'm like, I already had this foundation before, and it was only focusing on children and women. But then I'm like, I need to make this become one. Before that, after having my successful cube, I go into schools and I'm like, I want to talk about veganism. I was denied. They were like, you're not registered, you're not a foundation. What you're doing is not right. You need to come back when you're organized, because they couldn't allow me as a single person to do activism and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back. This is when I had the idea of making the foundation vegan, and I went back to that same school. However, this time around, when I went back to that same school, I told them that I was here to talk about anti-bullying. I was there to talk about depression, drug abuse, and so on and so forth. So they gave me a clue. They were like, "Yes, your foundation, come and talk about this," because they're the issues they face in schools. So at the end, after we're done, this is when I brought about my first experience of on veganism towards kids, and I talked about the kids. So by the time the dean came in, the teachers came in, it was already too late, and also they had no knowledge about veganism and all
Mhm.
that. It was new to them, so they let me finish. And surprisingly, when some of them at the end came and they were curious, they wanted to know more. So yeah, that's it. Podrska is a term. It's a Croatian term that means support.
Support. Okay.
Yeah, in English. So that's yeah. Someone may ask me why did I choose Croatian language? After the previous World Cup, it was after Croatia went to the finals of the World Cup, football World Cup. It didn't win, but then it inspired. It was the underdog. No one saw it to reach there, so that's what inspired me. And I was like, let me get it from here because it's an underdog and it has gotten really far. So yeah, that's how we're thinking about.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So, before we go any further, tell us where Uganda is in Africa. It's
Uganda is located in East Africa.
in East Africa, yeah.
Yeah.
So, what is the culture of Uganda? Traditional foods of Uganda.
So if you look at mostly now where I'm from the central, we have what we call East African high bananas.
Mm.
They're called matoke, but they're bananas that are cooked. For them, they are cooked. They're not eaten raw.
Hmm.
And then so that's the staple food. It's basically matoke and beans, I should say. Then
Hmm.
you go like in the eastern part of they usually use potatoes, you know,
Hmm.
potatoes and peanuts, and then it's you look at basically then in the west and some parts where they consume like sorghum and so on and so forth. Basically, I would say that traditionally, like across the country, all meals plant based.
Hmm.
It's very hard to find a traditional meal, staple food. Yeah, that's the right term. The staple foods that have meat as an ingredient or meat as a soup or whatever. Basically, they are
Right.
all plant-based staple foods.
Plant-based staple foods, yeah. So, Uganda was obviously colonized, right? Was it colonized by the British?
Yeah, by the British.
By the British, yeah. When did Uganda get independence from the British? Was it in the 50s?
1962.
1962. Okay. Because I recall you had a famous president, Idi Amin Dada. That we all know about him.
Yeah, yeah. It was because he felt like Africans needed to do, we needed to have that self drive to
Hmm.
attain things the way we need and do away with colonialists and so on and so forth.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So colonialism actually introduces these animal foods, wherever they go, because that's how you control the people. Because that creates scarcity. People are fighting for the animal foods, and then you have people who are poor who will then do things for the colonizers. So that's the pattern I've seen. Even in West Africa, in Ghana, it's the same thing. It's uh, the boarding schools that teach the children that they have to eat meat or they have to eat dairy, even though they're all lactose intolerant and they really cannot even digest the milk. You know, so there's an undercurrent of colonialism that's driving the adoption of animal foods.
So, what I would say about that is that I think it lies across here, whereby even when you look into primary schools where they're teaching how to have a balanced diet and they're putting milk and meat on the top of the list, and
Hmm.
they're telling people to consume them, and then despite the fact that that even when you're lacto intolerant, they'll tell you, let's give you medication. I myself, I'm not lactose intolerant, but the fact that many people, some of the people don't know that I'm vegan, And when I'm like we out and we are having food, and I'm like I'm not having meat and so on and so forth, people are like, hey, I know that medicine to that if you want to start eating meat,
Right.
I can do that because they have believed. And when colonialists came in and they brought in everything that they turned into whatever, it's like, even if you look at what we are having right now, whereby again veganism is being colonized again, and there are various terms are coming into, like plant forward, plant based, so on and so forth. That now, you find that there are many people who are really now getting the attention away from the animals, who are the real victims, and they are putting it onto another's part, you know they're turning away from the animals, and yet that's the major reason why we're doing what we do. So yeah, you're right. In schools, it's being taught that kids are supposed to have milk and meat to have the best diet. But then this is why we have the vegan school campaigns, where we go to schools and we teach teachers themselves, we teach the kids themselves, we set up vegan clubs to sensitize and create awareness on such issues. And slowly by slowly, we want to reach to the top where we can influence the, the system itself. And yeah, we can do something about it. And this can go out of, the education curriculum. So yeah.
How receptive are the teachers to your message?
I would say that it's a two-way thing across all kind of projects that we do. But to be honest, all of the teachers that have come to me after we done teaching, they have all been positive about veganism. They're always curious. They always want to know more because they have heard something about it and they don't know the details. They're like, oh, I've heard this and this, And then trust me, like I myself, from the beginning, I didn't know that animals had rights. I didn't know that someone could stand up for an animal. So I would say that it's all about the ignorance that we people are having, and we don't know what we're doing. But that's still, the fact that you don't know what you're doing doesn't take away the fact that you're harming another being. You understand? So what we do, or what they do, is that they're always receptive for most of them. And because I've never had any teacher come to me and they against what I've said, that's a good thing, I should say. So yeah, they have always been receptive and they want to know more. So yeah, that's it. I can't actually hear you.
Yeah, I'm sure they're all aware of the traditional foods of the region. The banana that you're talking about, which is the base of the starch base, and then the beans, which give the protein, right? So you pretty much, with the bananas and beans, you have a complete meal pretty much there. And knowing that, are they are they open to offering such foods to their children in school?
Um, yeah, I would say, vegetables are really cheap,
Hmm.
you know, unlike meat. So you find that 80%, actually, yeah, 80% of the meals given in schools are plant-based. You find that it will be only Fridays and maybe Sundays where they give out meat. And but then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, it's always maize flour
Hmm.
and beans.
Hmm.
So yeah, in schools that's what's always given. Apart from maybe Sundays where they will cook rice and meat, or Fridays where they'll cook rice and meat for some schools. But generally, that's what they usually prepare. Now the problem comes in, like when kids are out of school, and then you, like, now they're youth, and you're telling them that they're like, oh, you're telling me to drop meat, but then I need a source of protein, and then you're like, we have beans. They're like, I ate beans for my entire life when I was in school, because you find that they spend about 18 years of their lifetime in schools, the first 18 years. So they're like, I can't have beans again. I've been having beans and maize flour for the rest of my life. So give me something else. You understand? But
Hmm.
otherwise, yeah, that's it. Schools give 80% of the meals are always plant based.
Okay, okay. So it's basically an aspirational thing they've made, eating animals. Yeah. Um, are there a lot of fast food places in Kampala?
Yeah, I would say, but they're very cheapest one. I would say they only sell what we have what we call Rolex, and it's just a mixer where they get eggs, they fry them, and then they mix them into chapatis.
Hmm.
You know, yeah, and those ones are the cheap. But then you look at the other fast kind of foods. That's like that's what you find everywhere. But then the rest, I should say, they're kind of they are the usual, like how you see KFC and so on and so forth. So, cafe Javas, so on and so forth. But the rest, that's what they basically sell the fast foods. Nothing really in particular.
Right.
And they are, yeah.
So how can people help you to
Yes.
grow
How
your
can people?
movement?
Now, what I should say is that basically it's through donations. What I can say, why? Because you find that we have a number of projects that we're having, and every single project that we do, we make sure that it helps both humans and non-humans. Because looking at Africans or Ugandans in particular, when you want to, when you are talking to them about animals and their rights and their lives, they usually base their lives on animals. Let me say a local family that's an average, or let's say a usual family that's below the poverty line, you find that at least they have like maybe three chickens, because chickens, hens are usually the most consumed animals here, you know. So you
Hmm.
find that they have their hen that gives them eggs and so on and so forth, and then a little garden. So when you tell them to stop consuming animals, they're like, how am I going to live? This is that what
Right.
has been fixing. So it
Right.
means that we have to follow up. It's more than veganism. It's more than consumption to them. So we make sure that we bring up projects that are sustainable to
Hmm.
what they are going through. So this is like we have a project that we call Project Grow. This project is basically aimed at those people who are the slum dwellers who live in slums, and they teach them on how to grow crops in small areas, because you find that in slums, just from a house to another house, there's no space, so they don't have space to grow their fruits and so on and so forth of food. So we make sure that they collect plastics from the environment.
Hmm.
Even old clothes, they use these old clothes, they turn them into gardens, like a panty. They just put the soil into that pant or trouser, and then they put holes on it, and then it becomes a garden. They just have to hang it somewhere. The tins, the plastics. So we make them, we turn these components into gardens that they can use. And
Hmm.
what does this do? This makes sure that it brings food closer to them,
Hmm.
which is nutritious and which is fresh. So on top of that, when this happens, before it all happens, we tell them why are we dealing with plant-based farming, and we are not giving them agriculture. Sorry, we are not giving them animal related, kind of projects, because we need them to know why we are going plant-based and not the other way
Hmm.
around. And we always also talk about their health, how how the how animal agriculture is affecting their health. But usually, what we begin with is always the animals, then we do their health, then the environment. Then another project that we have in this same line, it's called the Lady Project. Now, basically, this project is to support women who are HIV positive, women who are under so much poverty, women of domestic violence, the victims, teenage mothers, and so on and so forth. Now, this project came as a reason whereby we had our first vegan school campaign, and this kid came to us and she was like, yes, I want to go vegan, but the problem is when I go vegan, my parents will stop me from going to school because they get my school fees from animal rearing and sort of something of the sort. So we decided that we come up with this program where we teach women to make clothes, jewelry, and so much and so forth, all kinds of related in vegan related materials or fabrics. So they make clothes, they make bags, they make earrings, and all those sorts of jewelry. And all this is under, we use, apparently, have only one fabric that change, it's out of cotton, and we're on the look for various leather products that we can use to make various things. So what we do is that when we sell, we put these items on sale, and part of the profit comes back to the women themselves, and then the other part goes to the organization to buy more raw materials and then recruit more women. So it's always a circle, always moving. And we tell them, why are we choosing cruelty free fabric and not any other thing? Then another thing, why how we will need people to help us is, of course, through the word, because at the end of it all, what we are trying to do is that we are trying to spread the word of animal free, a world of animal free quality. So we need people to know, because when you talk to people, when you see on the internet, people are always saying that you can't be vegan in Africa, you can't, in third world countries, because life is different. No, it's not. The money that the governments, the money that the big foundations are using to incur animal-based, products, animal-based companies, it's the same money they can use to put and focus onto plant-based
Mhm.
companies and so on and so forth. So yeah, basically what we need for every project that we have, Project Grow, we have the vegan school campaign, we have the Lady Project. Now we also have what we call the compassion feeding program, whereby we give people food that's already warm, that's already cooked and hot. It's plant-based 100%. And these are homeless people who don't have where to sleep. Now, this program has two bits. We have the vegan feeding program, where we give people already uncooked food for families that hardly find it hard to get a meal, so they cook for themselves because they have where to cook from. And then we have another sector of the people who don't have where to cook from. So that's what we call a compassionate feeding program, whereby we give them food that's already cooked, and that's already cooked. So all they have to do is to get a plate. Actually, we also have their plates. We give them everything. All they have to do is turn up and they have their food. Yeah. So basically, that's why we need. That's what we need and why we need what we need from weapons. So,
Right. So the compassionate feeding program that you have, is that in Kampala alone, or do you do that? Would you like to do that throughout Uganda?
yes, apparently we are beginning small with all of our projects that we do, because we also have projects that are coming up to help refugees. Already we had started one, but then the COVID came in, and with funds availing, we want to reach also the refugee community. But apparently we are in Kampala alone because of the limited resources. But generally we want to do it across Uganda, and in the future, because our target is to have a proper mainstream of whereby we're going to unite. Actually, if all goes well this year or beginning of this year, we are building up a program where we want to unite all African vegans into one and mentor them on how to do the right ways, on how to do the right activism in a
Mm.
black manner. And like, because there are certain things that in the European world that they do, and the moment you do them here, you're at risk of losing your life. So yeah, everything we are trying to do is on a bigger scale in the future and so on and so forth.
You mentioned African Vegans. Is that an organization that throughout Africa?
No, no, not really.
Okay.
What we're trying to come up is, it's what we are want to call it like African vegan mentorship, where we are mentoring vegans to become
Mhm.
active and also non-vegans to become vegans. So it's a process where we are going to be mentoring them to do things in a black manner way, like yeah. So that's it.
Wonderful. Um, what are the incidences of chronic diseases in Uganda? I mean, do you have issues with diabetes and heart disease and all that, like we find
Yeah,
in countries? Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's very high. And actually, when I'm doing my activism, I use that as an advantage, because people really, to be honest, when you talk about that animal lives matter, many people are going to laugh it off because it's new to him. And maybe when then we try to use empathy, we try to put them into their shoes. But then what strikes them most is when you tell them that uh, when you tell them why that the doctors asking them to leave meat and milk. Because you look at 90% or 95% of all our parents, grandparents, have already been asked by the doctors to stop consuming meat, to stop consuming milk, because it's not healthy, because they're already diabetic, and they have the high blood pressure and so on and so forth. So I use this as a key point whenever I'm doing my activism on the earth perspective, because they will listen to it more, and because they have experienced it. I personally, I had a friend and I was telling her, please, actually there are two. One was a male, another one was a female, and they're alive, thank God. But I was saying them, please stop consuming meat. You'll get high blood pressure. You'll get diabetes. And they're like, I cannot. 2 weeks later, at the same time, they were diagnosed with, with diabetes, and they were told the same thing. And now they're trying to live off the, the meat industry products and so on and so forth. So yeah, the when you talk about pressure, uh, you talk about you talk about diabetes. It's really on a very high scale. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. Is that a recent phenomenon, or is that been going on since as far as you know?
Yeah, this has been going on like forever. But because our world and how we are being lied by the media, the
Mm.
way the media is influencing today's generation, where they are showing us how these diets are really healthy, and they are blinding the whole world. So they come to us, they take advantage of everything. So it's been going on, but I'm sure with time, through the hard work and so on and so forth, we shall be able to break the wall.
Wonderful. I've posted your Patreon link, okay, on the chat. So I'll post it again. So I encourage everyone to support you on Patreon. And thank you for all the amazing work that you're doing in Uganda.
Yeah, thank you so much for the share. Thank you so much for that donation and support. Yeah, what we do, we're doing it because if we don't do it, then no one else is going to do it. So it's up to us. It's up to me to come to stand up and start fighting for this, because, the fact that we are the mighty ones, that means it gives us an upper hand to fight for the weaker ones, and that's what we should all be doing. We should always use our strength to protect those we need to protect. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your passion and thank you for your commitment for making this
Pleasure
happen.
is mine.
And are there any last words you want to leave our viewers with?
Yeah, maybe what I could say, the last thing, that we all have careers, we all have professions, and trust me, in every career, in every profession that each of us is doing, there is a way we can help the animals. There is a way we can help the weaker ones, and we don't have for you to be active for the animals, for you to be active for the environment. You don't have to go on the streets and start shouting and start holding posters that please go off this. But it's all about talking to someone, you know, talking to someone. And remember that every small difference, every small change, every small act makes a difference. So that's what I can say. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here once again. Thank you.